Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Strait Science. Strait Science is an evening seminar series put on by University of Alaska Northwest Campus in Nome, as well as University of Alaska Fairbanks Alaska Sea Grant. And tonight you're in the work office. And both Northwest Campus and Alaska Sea Grant, we are public servants of the Bering Strait region. We serve all peoples of the Bering Strait region, which is the homeland and waters of the Inupiaq, St. Lawrence Island Yupik, and Central Yupik peoples. So tonight we have a very good Strait Science and a very notable speaker. We have Robyn Angliss on the line. I will tell you right now, she is calling in from Seattle, so it is already 7:30 her time. So she's had a long, busy day, and here she is taking the time to provide us information that we are interested in. I know I am, very much so. Robyn works for NOAA, NOAA. She works for NOAA Fisheries. She is the leader of the Cetacean Assessment and Ecology program at the Alaska Fisheries Science Center, which is located in Seattle. So with that, what could be more Bering Strait than hearing about Bowhead and Beluga? Let's not shortchange Beluga in all my excitement about Bowhead. But the results, normally we don't talk about the Beaufort Sea too much, but when it comes to Bowhead, they're headed our way. Actually, they're headed back to the Beaufort right about now, getting ready to go. And so it's such an important animal for the Bering Strait region where they really live. And so we thank Robyn immensely, not only at the end of a long day, but she's going to give us the 2025 Bowhead and Beluga survey results and next steps. So thank you so much, Robyn, for being here, and take it away.
Thank you very much, Gay. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfect.
And fantastic. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
There you, it looks good.
Okay. Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to folks tonight. I'm going to say some words about the 2025 survey for bowhead and beluga whales in the Beaufort and Chukchi Seas. And like Gay said, even though we did the survey in the Beaufort Sea, this is really relevant to folks in the Bering Strait region because the animals do migrate back and forth in the Bering Strait annually, and so pass by every year. So I do want to acknowledge a number of partnerships and people that we've been working with. And the first one and the most important one is the North Slope Borough Department of Wildlife Management. You'll see on the bottom right-hand corner that I've included their logo throughout the presentation because they have been a partner in designing, implementing, and funding this from the very beginning of the project. I've also listed the other key folks here and where the funding for the project came from. We don't do this very often, in part because it is a very resource intensive project and requires support from a number of different places. And for this round, we got the money from NOAA, the North Slope Borough, and the North Slope Borough received support from the National Petroleum Reserve Alaska program through a grant. So this was one of the more people-intensive projects I worked on because it spanned 2 different countries, and we had 3 aircraft and a pretty complicated project. Throughout the whole project, John Sitter from the from North Slope Borough worked with me directly. Billy Adams and John Hobson were really key in working with the Inuvialuit communities in Canada in order to explain what we were doing and why we're doing it and why we're going to be flying over beluga that they care about. We have a number of observers. In the project and field team leadership, I want to call out too Kim Getz and Millie Brower and Cynthia Chrisman. People can look at this later online, and so I won't list everybody, but those are the key folks. I will specifically call out Megan Ferguson as well. Megan has over the many years given a number of presentations to Strait Science, and she was really the person who laid the foundation for this survey back in 2019. And so we tiered off what she started back then and brought it into 2025 with some minor changes. So why is it important to count whales? So there are a couple of key reasons for assessing whale abundance. One is if you collect abundance information over time, you can get a trend in abundance, and that can help us understand whether the population is increasing, decreasing, or stable, and let us know whether there's something going on with the population that we need to spend more time thinking about. The abundance information is also very critical for setting sustainable management limits. And for bowhead whales, this means the harvest quota that is set by the IWC. So how do we collect information on bowhead and beluga whales? So for different whale species, we collect information on abundance for different whale species in different ways. Because bowheads and belugas are so wide ranging and they move around a lot. The best way we have found to collect information on abundance is to do aerial surveys. So over a period of 3 to 4 weeks, we can fly surveys and kind of collect a snapshot of how many animals are in the area at one time. We design survey tracks for the aircraft to fly on that sample the area where the animals are distributed. We have, and you can see the observers down in the lower left-hand corner. We have an observer on both the left and the right-hand side of the aircraft. They look out of bubble windows. You can see a bubble window in the picture on the right. Some of the aircraft have got bubble windows so big that I could put my whole shoulders into a window and have a very good view. So a lot of these aircraft have is just extraordinary views of the water to make the counting better. Once the data are collected, somebody analyzes the counts to estimate abundance. Oh, I should say too that in the picture of the interior of the aircraft, you can see somebody sitting in the back of the plane. That's a computer operator, and that person is collecting sightings information from the two observers. So a bit of a focus on bowhead whales. So both bowhead whales and beluga whales are really critical subsistence resources for many Alaska Native communities. The NOAA and the North Slope Borough share an interest and responsibility for providing information to the International Whaling Commission in order to set the harvest quota. Over many years, the North Slope Borough has primarily used an ice-based census where people stand on the sea ice near shore, right by Utqiagvik, where the bowhead whales come around the corner from the Bering Sea to the Chukchi Sea into the Beaufort Sea. And because they come pretty close to shore, they set up perches at Utqiagvik in order to count the whales. Well, in more recent years, the ice has not been as stable. And in 2019, Megan Ferguson made a major effort to design and implement a Beaufort Sea wide aerial survey to see if it was going to be reasonable to use aerial surveys to count whales instead of using a sea ice based approach. And fortunately, that year there was both a sea ice base count and an aerial count. And I don't remember exactly what the numbers were, but they were close enough that the IWC felt like that the aerial survey was a reasonable way to collect abundance information. So we redid the survey again in 2025. And that information from 2025 will be used in about 4 years in order to inform the IWC and their discussions about the harvest quota. So next I want to say a few things about beluga whales. So as Gay mentioned, beluga whales there's multiple populations of beluga whales in Alaska. There's multiple stocks. Stocks are a management unit that are separated by genetics and behavior and summering ranges and that kind of thing. So there are multiple stocks. There's the Cook Inlet stock, and the yellow highlight focuses on the summer ranges. So going from south to north, there's the Cook Inlet stock, the Bristol Bay stock, there's the Eastern Bering Sea stock, and then there's the Eastern Chukchi Sea stock and the Beaufort Sea stock. The Beaufort Sea stock is over there during the summertime, is over there mostly in the Eastern Canadian Beaufort. The last, and I should mention too that the Beaufort Sea stock of beluga whales is incredibly important to the Canadians and the Inuvialuit. That's their key subsistence stock. So for the U.S., it's more bowheads. For the Canadians, it's more beluga. And so one of the really important partnerships that we formed was in order to sell that we needed to do a bowhead survey in Canadian areas, we also needed to say, hey, and we're going to help all of us get an updated abundance estimate for Beaufort Sea beluga. So the last survey to estimate beluga abundance was done in 2019. There were 41,000 beluga whales, roughly, and that's a Ferguson et al. Paper that's in review. And NOAA and the Alaska Beluga Whale Committee work together to make sure that the different stocks are surveyed routinely. So in 2025, we also, during our survey, collected information on the Beaufort Sea stock of beluga whales. So why did we pick this area? So the maps don't quite line up, but on the left-hand side and on the right-hand side, we have a map of Alaska and Canada. And on the left-hand side is bowhead whale distribution, and on the right-hand side is beluga whale distribution. Turns out in late July and late August, both stocks are in the Beaufort Sea. And so we can time our survey to survey most of the population during that period. So this was considered a really good time of year to do the project. Because the area is so big, we had 3 aircraft. We had 2 aircraft based out of Inuvik, that's in Canada, and you can see 2 tiny little aircraft symbols in Inuvik. They're in red. And then we had 1 aircraft in Deadhorse in the U.S. And they handled the aircraft in Canada handled the track lines that occurred offshore of Canada, and the U.S. aircraft handled the track lines in the U.S. We based the survey design primarily on what Megan Ferguson did in 2019, but we did make a few changes in response to some of her results and what we heard from people in different villages and other researchers who were familiar with where animals go this time of year. So we shifted the track lines, we flew a little further offshore in some areas. That's the area due north of Canada. That's kind of the lopsided oval. We flew north into Viscount Melville Sound. That's the circle over kind of on the far right. Over to the far left, we extended the survey a little further into the Chukchi Sea because we were concerned that we were missing some bowheads that might have started to go south, and we wanted to make sure that we didn't miss those. And then we decided to not try to do survey lines off of Banks Island, and that was really a decision made because of logistics. It's that's very far away from the base of operations in Inuvik. We didn't expect that there would be a lot of whales there. We knew that there would be some and we would miss some, but it turns out to be very challenging to get there. So we opted to focus on the other areas, extending the lines, going into Viscount Sound, and leaving it that. Okay, so at this point, I am going to switch to a video, so stand by. Okay.
Hi, my name is Cynthia Christman. I'm a research scientist with the Seattle Lab and also with the University of Washington. And I'm here in Dead Horse, Alaska with my team, actually sitting in our survey aircraft, a NOAA Twin Otter. We're here to conduct a survey of bowhead whales and beluga whales in the Beaufort Sea, which is part of the Arctic Ocean. If all goes well, together with two other teams that we have stationed in Canada, we're hoping to survey 87 transect lines that are perpendicular to the coastline and extend offshore to the 1,500-meter isobath. This project is actually part of a larger collaboration with Alaska's North Slope Borough and Canada's Fisheries Joint Management Committee, and we're hoping to use these data to calculate new abundance estimates for the Western Arctic stock of bowhead whales and the Beaufort Sea stock of beluga whales. We can then use these data, compare it to those from previous years, to help us understand if these populations are increasing, decreasing, or stable. And we'll be using this data to help manage these species.
Thank you, Cynthia. All right, so the 2025 survey was from 28 July to 22 August of 2025. It did actually last slightly longer, but we had terrible weather late in the season, and so nobody got to fly. We used 3 aircraft, again, 2 in Inuvik and 1 in Dead Horse. There were 15,116 kilometers, or almost 10,000 miles of transect effort. That does not include deadheading or flying over land in order to reach the survey area, or flying back from the survey area. As I mentioned, it was a very large area and there was a lot of transit time built into the project. So there was a lot more flying than what's listed here. 85% of the survey effort occurred during preferred survey conditions, meaning that the winds were at a wind speed that they could manage, and there weren't really bad whitecaps, and there was a limited amount of sea ice and that kind of thing. And we distributed daily reports to many people in order to keep partners in the loop, partners primarily in the Beaufort Sea area, in the loop on what we were doing. And over on the right-hand side, it's a picture of the inside of the aircraft from the perspective of the computer operator, and one of the many daily reports that we sent out that provided information on where we went that day and what we saw. So this is the Bowhead Whale sightings from last summer, and I'm calling these preliminary. The data, I believe we're done editing the data, but it's possible that the numbers could change slightly between now and when they're published. So I do call this preliminary information. We had 200 sightings and actually that should be 300, not 3,000. That's an important edit. That should be 300 animals, not 3,000. Beluga whale sightings, we had 783 sightings, and 2,377 animals. And for those of you curious about how this compares to the 2019, we did see, if I remember correctly, slightly fewer bowhead whales, slightly more beluga, but in just squinting our eyes and looking at the numbers of animals, it should be enough to get a good abundance estimate for both. Now, one thing that you may notice from both of these plots is that there are some areas. Can you see the pointer when I move it around?
Yes.
Okay, so the dark areas on these track lines are the places that we flew successfully. And these areas here that are lighter gray are areas where we did not have successful effort. And so you can see that there's a whole big area over here where we did not successfully collect data. We did try multiple times to go back to those areas and fly those areas, but we had a problem with very persistent high concentrations of sea ice in those areas. And if there's high concentrations of sea ice, even if there's animals there, we're very unlikely to see them. And so if we were around high concentrations of sea ice for very long, we would turn around and go elsewhere. So next steps for the 2025 survey. The first thing we're doing is a preliminary estimate of the bowhead whale abundance. We think we're going to have this finished in late 2026. Alex Urbini at the University of Washington is the lead for that effort. We do need to have an updated estimate for the 2028 IWC Scientific Committee in April of 2028. So that's a couple years from now. So it's going to take us a few years to have a what we consider a near final bowhead whale abundance estimate. And I understand that the IWC quota would happen a couple of years after that. We expect to complete an estimate of the Beaufort Sea beluga abundance sometime in 2028. I don't know exactly when yet. We are routinely coordinating and communicating with the North Slope Borough as our partner and briefing numerous people who have helped us with this project, both in the US and Canada, to make sure that everybody is aware of what we're doing and how things are going. And then our next aerial survey for bowhead whales and Beaufort Sea beluga whales is planned for 2032. And I wanted to give you a couple of links for more information. So there's a pretty thorough web story and a link to the video on our website, and that link is provided here. And Kim Getz and the team completed a field report exceptionally quickly and had that available just a couple of months after the field work was over. And that's also available to anybody who is curious about additional information. And then for contacts, I'll give myself, John Setta, and Kim Getz. If you have questions, you can send it to any one of us and we should be able to help you out. So with that, I wanted to say thank you for your interest and find out if anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Robyn. There we go. I'm back. So thank you, Robyn. Very much appreciate that. And I don't know if it's available. I just was able to grab that NOAA International Survey Counts and Beluga Whale in the Beaufort Sea, that article from February 12th, and put that in. Is there a way to get the field report link?
Yes, let me pull that out and paste it in. Stand by.
I love slides, but it's tough to be there
I
they go.
hear you.
You can't grab the link, so I try real fast. And while she's doing that, yes, as you can see, people are already writing. This is where the Straight Science audience shows some love for the speaker. Drop it in there for Robyn. She's taken time out of her long day to give us information on the Bowhead and Beluga whale bearing. I'm sorry, bearing, not bearing,
Beaufort.
not bearing. Beaufort Sea abundance estimate was. So when you're done, feel free to raise your hand or put something in the chat if you have a question. I know I've got some questions. So maybe I can start off. Oh, okay. Hand is up and I'm getting all kinds of signals. Go ahead, Sue Moore. The floor is yours.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm kind of here in my dark little office. Anyway, Robyn, first, thanks for your presentation. It's great to get the results of what was just an amazing effort. I mean, 3 aircraft flying at once is no small task, and really pleased you guys were able to pull that off. Um, my question really has more to do with the habitat selection that I see in the maps, which is very similar to what I reported in my dissertation in the late 90s. In other words, beluga in the Beaufort Sea in the U.S., they're on the slope, and bowheads are on the shelf. And I've talked with, of course, Megan and Janet many times about this. I'm just wondering if you and your team, Kim Getz and others, Alex, might be thinking about looking at bathymetric data in the sense of perhaps improving or working on estimates of abundance that also take into account bathymetric features.
I would say not yet. The initial pass on estimating abundance is going to probably be a pretty traditional, conventional distance sampling approach to see if that provides a CV that's good enough for the IWC. If we need
Can
to
you just
get more sophisticated, then yes, we will probably be doing some spatial analysis and considering other options.
So for people who may not know what that meant regarding CVs and things like that, can you break it down for us in the Bering
Yeah,
Strait
sure.
region a little bit?
So
Appreciate that.
the the conventional way to analyze aerial survey line transit data is dependent on kind of calculating how many animals you see for a square kilometer and then extrapolating it. It doesn't include a lot of extra environmental factors necessarily. The kind of analysis that I think Sue is referring to is a much more complicated spatial analysis. And we are starting with the simple approach and moving to the more complicated approach if we need to.
Yeah, and all I'm suggesting is habitat selection based on bathymetry is not incredibly complex.
Okay, thanks for that feedback.
Yep,
All
good
right.
presentation, Robyn. Thank you.
That sounds good. Thank you, Sue. All right. I have a question on, because we didn't really get your final number, right? I guess that's coming with Alex Zerbini later in the year.
Yeah, so Alex is working on a preliminary estimate, and that should be available the end of this year.
And I've got another question, but we have Rick Toman with his hand up. Go ahead, Rick. I'll circle back.
Yeah, thanks very much, Robyn. Very interesting. I guess I was interested in the areas that you weren't able to survey, and because of too much sea ice, is that in the estimates? Is that in any way taken into account, the fact that at least some of that area would be some of the whales would like that habitat, but couldn't get there.
Yeah,
The survey couldn't get there.
good question. So there were areas in 2019 that they couldn't survey also. So it kind of comes down to, even if we couldn't survey it, did we still sample enough of it to understand what the density is likely to be? And so I don't think we're going to have an answer to that until Alex and maybe other people crunch the numbers and see if the sampling was good enough to catch the density.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll circle back to my question. If it's possible, there's 11 coastal communities in Alaska that have the authority to harvest the bowhead whale for subsistence purposes. And 4 of those are in the Bering Strait region. That would be Diomede, Wales, Gamble, and Savunga. And the spring season is upon us, and we're excited. Everyone's excited about that and hoping for good outcomes. Is it possible to maybe give us, because we're usually, a lot of this takes place, a lot of the management and research take place up in the North Slope Borough, and we all understand that. Is it possible to give us like the 50,000-foot understanding of how this kind of exercise of getting a number will then be utilized to end up coming back as a harvest quota? I know it's very much understood further north, but down here in the Bering Strait region, we don't really usually get an opportunity to hear even sort of the how it works for everyone down here. We have 12 other communities here that are coastal, and I'm sure many wish they could bowhead whale, but just walk us through that if you could.
For a really detailed understanding of how it works, we should get an expert on the International Whaling Commission to give a talk and provide some information. If there's a lot of interest in the Bering Strait region about how the IWC works, that would be a much better way to go. The role of the Science Center is to collect the information and give it to the IWC for them to review and for them to use in decision making.
Yeah. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that, but that would actually be a great idea because there's a lot of interest in other whales, other whale species in the Bering Strait region. We are a comprehensive user of the ecosystem. And I think that, there's a lot of questions. I understand we won't go into that here, but thank you. That's a great idea. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to track down somebody to come and talk to the Bering Strait region about that.
Yeah. So for us in the region, it's sort of like the International Whaling Commission is sort of like the board of game for management of large cetaceans for harvest. Yeah. Charlie, I see your hand is up. The floor is yours.
Hey, actually, before we do that, I do want to ask Sue and Jess, is there anything that I said about IWC that was terribly wrong? Anything you'd like to add?
Not on my end, but I know Sue probably has a lot more experience with the IWC than I do.
All right. And Jenny, I see you in the chat, but I already got Charlie on the hook here. All right, Charlie, go ahead. Floor is yours. Charlie, the floor is yours.
I was muted. Sorry. Okay. I'm a retired fish biologist. I've flown a lot of herring surveys in the May and June timeframe in Norton Sound, and some in Kotzebue and Bristol Bay and all over the place. I was just curious, what altitudes are you flying at, and how broadly spaced are your transects? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to double check. I think we're at 1,000 feet, but let me double check. And they're about, okay, so they're 19 kilometers apart. And we did that to be consistent with the 2019 survey. And I'm still scanning for the altitude. I think it was 1,000 feet.
That's what I guess.
Yeah.
To see beluga anyway. Um, I used to fly at 1500. I could see beluga, but it would have been better if I'd been lower to differentiate age and size and things like that. But
Here we go. 1,300 feet.
1300, okay.
Yeah, so a little higher.
Yeah. Yeah. So when we did herring, we estimated surface area and then did some back of the envelope calculations about water depth at that location and therefore the depth, the volume of the school. But you're counting individuals and then applying your count to a unsampled area
That's
to yeah,
that's correct.
yeah, okay. And so the methodology is the same for both beluga and bowhead, pretty much.
It is so you mean the extrapolation?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, so you're counting bowhead just like you did beluga, and then you expand your count to account for the entire area.
That's correct.
Yeah, yeah,
We are careful. We don't expand the count to like the entire Beaufort Sea. We expand the count to the area that was surveyed. Does that make sense? So we don't try to
hmm,
we don't try to extrapolate into places that we didn't sample.
right. But I mean, you're sampling. Your transects are much further apart than you could see.
Yes,
Yeah, so you have to expand some.
that's
Yeah,
correct.
yeah,
That's correct. We also adjust for the probability of detecting cetaceans. So sometimes the cetaceans are underwater and we don't see them. So we have a correction for that. And we correct for the fact that as the cetacean is the whale is further away from the plane, it's harder to see. And so we have a correction factor for that too.
right. Yeah, we did something similar for herring. Okay.
Yeah, I'm
Oh,
sure.
okay. Okay, thank you. Yep. Yeah,
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for
yeah,
the
Thanks,
questions.
Charlie.
yeah, yeah.
There's a question in the chat from Jenny, and she says, have any other countries counted whales using a similar aerial approach?
Yes, it's a common approach. In fact, the Canadians use this approach to count beluga whales in some years that we haven't, and some years that we have. They have not used this for bowheads, but again, the Canadians are more interested in beluga than bowheads because that's their primary subsistence species. We use aerial surveys for other beluga stocks around Alaska. We use aerial surveys, not my group, but another group on the East Coast uses aerial surveys for other large whales off of New England. It's a very common way to get information on cetacean abundance.
All right. So I have another question. That is, so 2019, that was the last population estimate. And that was, I
Yes.
wrote it down, 17,000 and change,
Yeah.
17,175. So and that was the there must have been a getting ready for the harvest quota to be established and make it back in time so there was seamless when the because it has like a certain shelf life, that quota, right? Every couple of years. And I
Yeah,
don't
I
know,
think
they've
it's I
just
think
redone
it's
it.
10 years. I think they have
Okay.
a new quota every
Yeah.
10 years or so.
Yeah. So you've done the survey in 2025, maybe get an estimate in 2026. When is the next quota going to come down? Do you know? And it's
So
okay if you don't
we
know.
So
I'm just trying to.
I don't know.
Okay,
But
that's okay.
even if we have a preliminary estimate this year or early 2027, it won't be until uh 2028 that we have 2028 or 2029 that we have a final estimate.
Okay.
So it's going to be a little bit longer.
Oh, wow. Oh, we'll get you back in 2028, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Hold you to that.
Or somebody can come back and talk to you about the final abundance estimate. It wouldn't be me. It would be somebody who does the math.
Mr.
But
Zerbini.
Mr. Bizerbini,
Yeah.
who does the math and does all the number crunching. But we can work on making sure that somebody comes back and gives you the final story.
All right. How are you doing? You're all right on questions? You got an interested
Oh,
audience.
yeah, I'm fine.
All right. So from Diane K in the chat, is there any potential way to use drones to cover more area, either with real-time counts or with video and counts after the flight?
So this is a question that's very near and dear to my heart, and I could talk about this for a long time. So I think it was 2017, I tried this and used a Scan Eagle drone that can fly long distances. And Megan Ferguson and I set up a project to compare the drone survey with surveys from aircraft. And the drone surveys are possible, but they are dramatically more expensive right now and logistically very complicated. And so I I think that we're going to be using conventional aircraft in the Arctic for quite a while yet. I think that drones have got a long time before they can catch up to what we can do with conventional aircraft.
Robyn, have you're talking to the Bering Strait region where we have a very large, ramp up of military assets and communications, and frankly, there's reasons why we're having more aerial incursions, things like that. Seems like anyway, data-free opinion. And you're NOAA, you're federal. I think those drones, there's some pretty big drones that are being probably utilized in the area at times. Is that anything you can talk to your military kind of federal brothers and sisters? And is there any chance of that?
So that's not something that we have been pursuing. Uh, we are really interested in using satellites to understand whale distribution. Kim Getz has been working on a project about that. It's probably another couple of years before she has results for bowhead whales, though. But we are really interested in using satellites for that work.
Boy, that would be something.
It would be, yeah, I agree.
And hopefully that answered it, Diane.
Hey, Diane, if you're interested, send me in some scientific publications on the drone project from an email, and I can send you some papers.
So are you asking Diane to drop her email in the chat? Or do you guys know each
Sure,
other?
Diane, if you want to do that.
Or Robyn, do you want to drop yours in the chat?
I can do that too. Can you hear
Yeah.
me?
Yeah, you somehow
suddenly...
it's like your microphone sort of skipped a beat there. You're on a different,
Oh,
but that's okay. Might be a battery or something.
is that better?
It's all good.
No.
No,
Okay.
we can hear you. Yep, it's good.
Okay. Diane, I'm putting my email in the chat.
And I have a beluga. I didn't want to leave out the beluga because the bowhead got the big questions here, but a curiosity on my part that the region may be interested in if it's current.
Go ahead.
So on page 7 of your slide deck, you were showing the beluga stocks, and thank you for defining stocks. And there's only one stock of bowhead, so here in Alaska, but for belugas, there's quite a number. As Robyn showed, there's 5, something like that, in western and northern Alaska. There's even some more, Cook Inlet and whoever else. So for us, though, there's many, and they are on. I don't know if you can share that.
Oh, do you want me to try to share it again?
Yeah, slide 7 in your deck. You're really good to number those, I have to say. Don't see that every day. That's awesome.
Yeah, that was all the software and not me. So
All
yay
right, well
software.
done.
Stand by. I am pulling it
No worries.
up.
So while that's being loaded, so we know we have all these stocks, and we actually, this is we actually have a earlier we had an international audience. They dropped off, but we had our neighbors to the west were on, and it may be I know it'll be of interest to our region. The beluga stocks on the Russian side. So the Bering Strait region, we are transboundary. We share the animals know no border, so they zip around. So on this side, we have those yellow circles indicate our stocks. Oh, you even have Cook Inlet, but they don't count for us because they stay there all the time. Poor things. And I
But
think
they still count.
they count, but not to us. And then the red ones are the red circle probably is the
That's
questionable
that's Kotzebue. Yeah, so
Kotzebue
that's
stock.
the Kotzebue summering area that the Alaska Beluga Whale Committee has recommended be called a stock.
Okay. Now, on the Russian side, is there any information you can give us on stock? Before the Ukraine war, there was, and I'm just out of I don't have the latest news, but there was a number of stocks. Are you able to show, because we're transboundary here and because we share everything with our neighbors, do you know off the top of your head how many stocks there may be in the Bering, sort of in that picture?
Yeah, I do not.
Okay, that's all
We
right.
really focus on what is going on in the US. It's like you mentioned, it is very hard to find out where the animals go in Russia and what kinds of harvest there is. It's much easier to do that in the US.
Well, of course, that's
Yeah.
the whole thing. You can't go over and study theirs, right? Because that's federal Russian Federation waters. So that we understand that, but I had always heard there was the Gulf of Anadir stock, and they have the same kind of situation where they have multiple stocks. Am I off base there?
Yeah,
Just
I'd have to go back and take a look at the stock assessment
okay, never
report.
mind.
If our stocks spend much time in Russia, then our marine mammal stock assessment reports would have some information on that. I just don't remember off the top of my head if they
Okay.
do.
Yeah, neither do I. And I just, since you did a nice job, I figured but you're US, and so that makes sense. But we did have someone on, so that was good. And they may have been able to answer, but they're not on at this time. I don't think. Not anymore. All right. Well, with that, any other questions? We really thank you, Robyn, for taking the time. And thank you for putting your information in the chat for Diane to get a hold of you. Any other questions, comments, concerns? We thank you, Robyn. And if you can just hold on for a couple of secs
Sure.
afterwards, if you can. And then for next week, we want to thank Robyn again for giving us this talk tonight. We appreciate it, and we will definitely be in touch as the clock winds down. And I love the idea of the sort of a technical walk us through how you get a quota and what is the International Whaling Commission sort of thing. So thank you for that. That's a great idea. So for next week, Straight Science will be on April 23rd at 6:30. And this one's going to be our own Sarah Hensley here in Nome with the Alaska Department of Fish and Game. She is a biologist for the Division of Wildlife Conservation, as we know. And she has very much wanted to do this Straight Science, and she wants input into the state harvest regulation system. And she wants to give us an overview of the Board of Game and how we can utilize that best for our regional purposes. And she wants to help or generate ideas for if people want to propose changes to different hunting seasons in Unit 22. She is on it and wants to reach out to everybody. So we applaud Sarah Hensley for doing that. And we'll see you next Thursday on the 23rd. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming, and we'll see you next week. Have a good night, everybody.